All right. At this time, we do have one speaker one to speak to the bill. Christopher Bruce, will you come to the podium, state who you are and who you're with, and 2 minutes. Would you do
Sounds
it in
good,
two
Mr.
minutes?
Chairman. Thank you so much. My name is Christopher Bruce. I am the political director for the ACLU of Georgia. In front of you, gentlemen, you have a letter by over 30 organizations opposing this bill in its current form. And it's basically going around this discussion that was brought up by Representative Alexander. There are a lot of basic things that we do believe that the general public should be aware of. And there's nothing so basic and nothing so important than our sacred constitutional rights. And this course could actually use that type of information to actually apprise people of their constitutional rights. So the two things that are really looking at us within this bill are, one, the interaction between the police and the people. And that has been a very highly touted topic lately, especially communities of color. So when there are bills that are in place talking about training of individuals of how they should interact with the police, and yet when you see individuals being shot and killed by the police or treated poorly by the police, and there's no bills that are addressing that, that is a slap in the face of those communities, especially communities of color. That's where these concerns are really coming from. And we're just saying that, hey, we will go ahead and we can address that too with the police. But within this bill that are going into communities of color and how to teach them how to interact with the police, you have to include constitutional rights within it. The American Civil Liberties Union emphasizes that to the utmost extent. And there is no reason why we should shy away from that. No, you do not need a legal course. I went to Georgia, go Dogs, for law school. We do not need a legal course on your basic constitutional rights dealing with police interactions. We could do this, and I'll recommend it, put this into a study committee, develop the course, and we can vote this out later on. We can have these type of conversations. We could table this all together and bring it back next year and work on it there. But I want to be perfectly clear when it comes to voting on something where you want your constitutional rights to be taught to your children about interacting with the police. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I yield to any questions.
Do we have any questions? All right,
Yes, hot mic.
Vice Chair
Hot
Ridley.
mic today.
Thank you for coming. I've got a couple of questions. I guess, and I've never grew up in a black community or community of color.
No.
And, I don't need no condescending remarks. I mean, I'm just saying, I don't know what y'all went through, but I know what I went through in my area, and having my last name wasn't real popular for about 100 years up there. So you was automatically kind of guilty whenever you got pulled over. But what you're talking about is a whole different bill that would go through public safety. It has to do with law enforcement. What we're doing here is nothing different than what we're requiring our teachers to teach in certain curriculum in schools. And I feel like y'all come in here and y'all are trying to make something out of nothing, to form a platform, because this bill has absolutely nothing to do with training police officers. That's a whole different committee. It's a whole different issue. All we're trying to do is make sure our kids, just like they know how to use the yield sign or when to use the express lane. We're just trying to teach them what to do when something happens, when a police officer gets behind you, because everybody gets nervous when the police officer gets behind you. And so that's all this bill is trying to do. And, and so that's y'all are on two different subjects. And like I think Representative Monahan said it, I'd welcome a bill. If y'all want to make police have training, I mean, add to their training, that's fine, but that'd go in public safety, and that would be a different issue. And that's, you want to talk about constitutional rights. If I ain't mistaken, I think y'all are pretty much always one stepping on constitutional rights. Y'all want to be able to say y'all stuff, but we can't say what we want to say, so it's not always even. But that's all I have to say.
Mr. Chairman, may I respond?
Well, I don't know if there's a question in that, more as of a statement. We've got another question from Representative Monahan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just to the gentleman's point, I know we talked about it. What is the bill number that includes the language that y'all would like to see?
You're talking about the bill number to include the language that we'd like to see?
No, I know you had I know we had several representatives here. You said you had language. What is that bill number?
I don't believe there is a bill number for any
So-
type of language. I believe it's going to be proposed in amendment.
Okay, but there's no
Representative
bill being
Alexander.
dropped, right?
I don't know if there is a bill being
But
dropped or not.
there's none that's been dropped yet.
I'm unaware if there's any bill
So-
that deals with
right,
your
so
constitutional rights.
Nothing been dropped so far. Let me say this. This is a bill about teaching, to the gentleman's point. This is a bill that's here to teach children about police interaction as they go under, and to the bills, it says right here, such curriculum shall be used as part of a driver education training course provided for by law. Driver training course as defined in Georgia code. That means a driver's ed course primarily for children. And so here's what I'm trying to say. I think the commentary here is, again, we find the politicization of a bill that's simply trying to teach all Georgians how to interact with police. For your sons, for your daughters, for these kids who get nervous, who don't understand. But we're using this today as talking points for maybe a video or something, because we want to try to score this political football and run it down the to the goal. It's just getting absurd at this point. This is not that bill. If you have a bill that does what you want to do, to the gentleman's point, that bill can go to public safety. That bill can go through higher education. That bill can go through education. That bill can go to judiciary. This is about teaching young drivers. We have circumscribed this measure to make sure that we're teaching all Georgia children who take a driver's education course prescribed by law, make sure they have some basic information about how they interact with law enforcement. And if I may take a moment of personal privilege, I appreciate if we don't politicize driver safety in this state, because it's not a political issue, it's a safety issue. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, thank you. I think we've had a pretty good discussion on this.
Mr. Chairman, I
just make
raised
one-
my hand.
Well, yeah, and everybody's had a chance to ask a question. People have got some rules and stuff to do. So I allow one more, Representative McLean, if you.
Thank you,
go ahead.
Mr. Chairman. I'm not gonna take long because I just want people to know that this was supposed to have been a question of the person in the way, I mean, at the podium, not statements. And I just want people to know that, sure, my youngest is 43. She was 16 and we had the talk. You know, there is a such thing as the talk. And what we have to try to realize is the communication is, I still don't know what this bill does. I mean, if we already teach it, why do we need it?
Okay, and I think we've heard that question before. Thank you for that. I'm on, can you give 2 minutes? I got, let Chairman Powell talk about this section 2.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you want to look at section 2, this is a bill that had passed earlier in the session as a House bill. And as we know that in the legislative process, things get tangled up. But this is the language that deals with the school zone cameras. Something we passed years ago to slow people down that are going through school zones. In the original version in the current law, it says that the school board has to sign for the permit to the DOT. DOT has to authorize permits to do these school zone cameras. And because of some conflict with some of the school systems, and it's as everything around here, it all goes back to money because they're not getting a portion or they want more than this and that. The cities and the county law enforcement, they're the ones that feel that they'd be the best appropriate source to sign that affidavit to the DOT to authorize these cameras. And that's what it does. There ain't no politics involved in this. There's nothing other than what it is. That if you think that a school zone camera, which carries no criminal offense, no traffic offense, it's only the cameras, and if somebody's speeding over 10 miles per hour through a school zone, then they're assessed. And there's due process into that so that They can appeal if it's not their car or if it's not them as a driver. And this has been extremely helpful in slowing down a lot of the drivers in the school zone. And that's what Section 2 does.
Any questions on Section 2 of the bill? Not seeing any. I think the posture we're in right now.
Mr. Chairman, briefly, just 2 seconds. That's why I cut my speech. So it was below 2 minutes just to respond in discussion.
We're good. You had 2
I was-
minutes, and we've got people that's got rules. We've got to go to. So thank you for your
I-
discussion.
This isn't political, it's constitutional. That's it.